Between the neurons, the dendrite and the the axon actually now, if you look at it this way, here's the soma, and the axon is going down and it's beginning to connect with a dendrite that's going to go into the soma of another neuron. But it's in this little space right in here that a lot of the action in the brain takes place, the synapse. And it's here where the anatomy, the chemistry, and the electricity of the neurons all comes together. In that presynaptic area, there are vesicles or little sacs that have the different neurotransmitters that we're going to be talking about in just a minute. And then through a chemical reaction, generally by calcium ions, that little sac is stimulated and it pops open and releases whatever neurotransmitters it has in there, and those are called first messengers. Then in that postsynaptic membrane, there are all sorts of receptors, and this is where it can get extremely complicated. But for now, most of the receptors are in the postsynaptic membrane, even though there are some presynaptic receptors that, as we go on in future classes, we'll be talking about. The receptors, there are many of them. They are not necessarily specific for one neurotransmitter, but they can be classified in one of two different ways. There is the ion channel receptor, which is a very more quick-acting type of receptor, and then there is the G protein receptor. It's also called a metapotropic, I think that's the way it's pronounced, receptor that is much slower. But what happens is that the neurotransmitter is released and goes into the synapse and then hooks onto a receptor at the other side, and that receptor then begins to affect the intracellular action, ultimately leading to gene expression and protein synthesis. And it is this much longer reaction that taking place that helps explain why many of the psychotropic medications do not give us an immediate response, but rather take up to 4 to 8 weeks for us to see, because of this process of first messenger, second messenger, third, fourth, fifth, and Stahl even talks about 6 messengers. Now at the bottom of this slide there is also a link, and there was at the bottom of the other slide and I forgot to mention it, to a website that I have found extremely useful for myself as I've tried to understand more about the brain and how it works. And the site is thebrain.mcgill. I hope that link will work for you, and I hope you'll have a lot of fun playing around in there. It's a marvelous site as far as I'm concerned. Let's move on to the next slide.